Thousands of people remain without power in southern England tonight and across the Channel Islands after heavy winds and rain from Storm Ciaran. A major incident was declared on the island of Jersey, which was hit with hurricane-force winds. Schools closed across the Channel Islands and southern England as power lines came down and buildings were damaged. We'll have the latest from across the UK throughout the programme tonight. But first, we're going to take a look in detail at how Ciaran hit. Well, the record-breaking storm moved in last night, bringing damaging winds to areas surrounding the English Channel. Jersey bore the brunt of those winds. They were recorded of up to 93 miles per hour. Some reports of gusts of more than 100 miles per hour in some parts of the island. There were also severe gales on the Isle of Wight and St Mary's Airport on the Scilly Isles. The strong winds continue to cause havoc in coastal parts of southern England and is now reaching eastern and northeastern parts of the country. Well, during the day, South East England saw gusts of 78 miles per hour. That was at Langdon Bay near Dover, along with severe gales in Guernsey, Portland in Dorset and Cardinham in Cornwall. Sky's Ashna Huranag has our first report this evening from Jersey.
For all the warnings, nothing could have prepared islanders for this. This is what hurricane-force winds look like. Unstoppable and unrelenting. Centuries-old trees that survived the Great Storm more than 3 decades ago, hacked down by violent gales. Ivor is taking matters into his own hands.
I think it's worse than 87. I really do, yeah. I mean, the house down the road, roof's totally gone.
First Light gave locals a chance to assess the damage. On this street, nothing was untouched. Lofts are now gaping and bricks and tiles lay strewn. Storm Ciaran's stamp around every corner. People have been waking up to see the aftermath and look at some of it here. You can see these garages have been caved in, such was the force and the pressure of that wind. Bits of slate have been blown off some of the roofs here and smashed through every single one of the windows of this house and the front door as well. Not only the windows of this house, but take a look at the cars belonging to the people who lived here. A few of the windows completely destroyed by the force of that wind. For many, it was a sleepless night.
Oh my God, it's going to smash the windows.
A nightmare that came true for Jess and her 3-month-old daughter, Penelope. Jess's quick reaction saved them from disaster.
I did go back in the room and there was a lot of glass all over the room, in her crib, on my bed, all over the floors. So yeah, the windows completely smashed in.
I mean, your mum does wonder if you hadn't grabbed it at the time.
Yeah.
Shards of glass, all over it.
Exactly.
Both were evacuated, just like Terry and his wife Angela, who watched as their chimney and then bedroom ceiling collapsed.
Next thing is a big bang. Wind coming through the window, and Angela upstairs shouting, "Help, help!" It hurts because everything you built up over the 50 years in our house means something, Now most of it's ruined. Still, can't do much about it.
They're safe and in a hotel, but nothing compares to home, even if it may now be unrecognisable.
Well, Ashna joins us now live from Jersey. And Ashna, just the scenes of devastation in some parts of Jersey overnight and into this morning, and they're not out of the woods yet.
No, they're not, Sarah-Jane. Jersey was told to brace for impact, and this storm has delivered blow after blow, and I don't think it's quite over yet. The winds have absolutely calmed down. They're certainly not into the 90s and 100 miles per hour, as some reports had been saying, but you can still feel the wind is quite bitter. The sea has calmed down quite a bit. The tide's now gone out, and I guess islanders will need to say what happens tomorrow morning. As of right now, 120 120 people have been evacuated today, including 30 children. There are 100 properties on this island currently without power. And also, crucially, the Port of Jersey has told us that Jersey Airport doesn't look like it's going to be open up until at least 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. And that's because of significant damage sustained to infrastructure, but also system failure. So concerns there. And one wonders whether that 2 p.m. deadline is going to slip. It will remain the case that ferries will not be running. And we understand that flights are not going to be running for some time too. Concern turns to supplies within supermarkets. We had seen some concern around some panic buying that had been taking place yesterday. But there are also some indication, some reports that menus are starting to suggest that supplies perhaps might be dwindling elsewhere. Tonight, the message remains, stay indoors. There are lots of routes which are still unpassable. There are still lots of trees uprooted from the ground, and the worry is there could be plenty of other debris that could be lying around that may cause harm.
OK, Ashna, thank you. Ashna in Jersey there. Stay safe, thank you. Well, hundreds of schools across the south of the country have been closed today because of the storm, and there have also been widespread power cuts. Our national correspondent Tom Parmenter has the latest for you from Weymouth in Dorset.
As it slammed through the channel and reached the mainland, a 300-mile stretch of England's southern coastline was on high alert. Rising waters caught many motorists out. The debris flew, and trees were torn from the ground. Thousands of properties lost power in Cornwall. At the Fox and Hounds in Scoria, the landlord filmed as the cables fell.
Then all of a sudden, we just saw all the power like flashing over behind it.
In Dorset, the road onto the Isle of Portland had to be closed off for the morning. Amongst the gridlock it caused, Prima was out trying to keep her appointments, caring for vulnerable people.
It's been getting worse. Yeah, it's dangerous. It's been getting worse. I'm scared. How will I go home in the evening? I'm scared about that now.
The intensity rose and fell throughout the day.
It's windy, it's blustery. You know, you just got to get on with it, though.
I was absolutely tipping it down when I went up. And now I'm going to go home, shut the door and stay in.
Hundreds of schools stayed closed. Some roads were just impassable. Getting anywhere on public transport was tricky. It was over here within 24 hours and wasn't as extreme on the south coast as some forecasters had predicted. The most devastating impact of this was felt out there across the water on the Channel Islands. Every part of the UK has communities that are cleaning up. In Northern Ireland, the authorities are waiting for river levels to drop before they can clear Market Street in Downpatrick. More heavy rain is hitting northeast Scotland. Storm Ciaran leaves behind many more flood alerts, and this winter is only just getting started. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Dorset.
Now, even before Ciaran hit, many towns along the south coast had already been dealing with heavy rain in the aftermath of Storm Babette. Hastings town centre suffered severe flooding just last weekend. And today, residents braced for more bad weather with amber weather warnings in place for winds of 60 miles per hour. Well, I went down there a little earlier today and spoke to John Bonas from Love Hastings, which represents businesses in the town.
So you were taking calls through the night, monitoring everything. As the sun came up this morning, I mean, you know, just look at the conditions behind us. We're still very much, you know, feeling the effects of the storm. What had happened overnight to businesses in Hastings?
Well, fortunately, very little, except for wind damage, of course.
Yeah.
And at 6, 7 in the morning this morning, I had to call out the fire brigade because we had roof slates flying across the town centre. It was you know, potentially lethal, and the fire brigade were on hand very quickly to cordon off parts of the centre so that people weren't going to get hurt.
Just how prepared were you for this extreme weather that we're experiencing?
We were prepared in the sense that Hastings has experienced flooding like this in the past, so people were, in a sense, are used to these events occurring.
Start of the year, back in January, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Only 10 months ago, you know, they saw water flooding up through their basements, they saw water pouring in through their front doors off the road. So, you know, they've experienced it recently, but, you know, the measures just weren't in place to stop that from, you know, individual properties from being damaged again. And that's when we had to sort of, you know, we saw what was potentially coming in this, you know, last night, and a huge multi-agency task force has got mobilised basically to get the plans in place that would, if we had been hit with heavy rain last night, hopefully have held the waters back.
So what's been the effect on local businesses? Because after what happened during Storm Babette, some of them just didn't open their doors again this week because they saw Storm Ciaran coming.
Once you're looking at, you know, flooded cellars and damaged stock, with the thought that the same thing might happen a few days later, yes, a couple of them, or more than a couple of them, made that exact decision of just saying, well, we'll shut up. If the waters rise again, so be it. You know, we'll take that on the chin and then get started once, you know, this weather system's gone past.
Do they feel like they're being supported enough by the local council, by the Environment Agency, not just in terms of warnings, but in terms of flood prevention? Like, what plans are in place?
I would say that the consensus is no, they don't feel supported enough. The fact that they've been hit twice in 10 months by such severe, you know, such severe flooding, just leaves them feeling as if, yeah, they're struggling on their own, and you know, they can't get, a lot of them can't get insurance. They are at that point where they're thinking, is it worth continuing to trade? And you know, I think it's all of our jobs to say to them, yes, it is. You know, you can get back on your feet, and we will get plans in place which will, you know, keep Hastings rolling into the future.
So the big question now, what's in store over the next few days? I'm joined in the studio by Sky meteorologist Joe Robinson. So Joe, what's coming next?
Well, there's still more rain in the forecast, unfortunately. We've got more rain to come. Storm Ciaran already brought quite a lot of rain, quite widely across England and Wales. We saw 15 millimetres. Across the south, up to 30 or 40 millimetres, and even more than that across southwest England. So we've already seen a lot of rain, and that's on top of the very wet October. And there's more rain in the forecast. So at the moment, we've got patchy rain tonight. It will slowly become increasingly confined to sort of northeastern parts of Britain. And there is a warning out at the moment across eastern parts of Scotland. That warning's in place at the moment until 6 o'clock tomorrow. So again, there we could see further rain, and they've already had flooding issues recently. So after recent storms there, so further flooding issues are possible. And then the unsettled conditions continue into the weekend. There's another warning in place for parts of southeast England on Saturday. Further rain moving in on Saturday, followed by showers, more strong winds, not like what we've seen recently, but more wet and windy weather. And unfortunately, it looks like that's set to continue through November.
Yeah, damp and soggy fireworks night ahead for many people.
Yes.
So we've had
quite a few have been cancelled, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, understandably.
Yes,
I mean, back-to-back storms for the UK. Longer term, what are we looking at weather-wise? Because, of course, we're going into the winter period and you expect bad weather, but this is, you know, beyond that.
Yeah, and looking at the outlook, it does look unsettled. It does look like we're going to see further spells of wind and rain through November, even December, and through, you know, winter as well. It's looking generally unsettled with more spells of wind and rain. There's not really any sign of anything particularly cold. I think looking at the longer range, there's perhaps signs at the end of winter, seeing perhaps something a bit colder. But at the moment, really, it's looking wet and windy spells. And it's not just us, you know, other parts of Europe. Already Spain have named another storm that's heading their way, Storm Domingos, so that's heading there. There's more wind and rain, so further poor conditions across western parts of Europe.
OK, Joe, you'll continue to follow it for us here on Sky News. Thank you so much. Thank you. To the war in the Middle East now, fighting continuing to intensify. Let's just bring you some live pictures we have from the Israel border with Gaza. These live pictures we can show you. Let me just have a look. They are showing you flares illuminating the sky over the territory. There we go. They are live pictures from the Israel border with Gaza. This is not rocket fire. These are flares illuminating the area, but it's quite the scene over the skies of the border tonight. Well, this comes as the United Nations organisation that supports Palestinians says one of its schools in Gaza has been damaged, reportedly killing at least 20 people. The school at the Jabalia refugee camp was being used as a shelter. Sky News has verified footage showing many injured people at that school, but has been unable to identify the cause. The Israeli military has not commented. Meanwhile, the Rafah crossing on the Egypt-Gaza border was open again today, with foreign nationals and some critically injured people passing through. The Foreign Office have confirmed more British nationals have been able to leave Gaza via that crossing today, including one doctor who spoke to Sky News a little earlier.
We are at the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing. We just handed out our passports, waiting for the passport to be processed. I have been met by the British Embassy officials in Cairo, and hopefully they will take us to Cairo.
That doctor, one of the lucky ones to leave Gaza. Still questions, though, over so many more British nationals. And the big question, why it's taking so long for them all to get out. Let's speak to Sky's political correspondent, Amanda Acas, who joins us now from Westminster. What information have we had from the Foreign Office, Amanda, about the process in extracting British nationals from Gaza? Because it's seemingly taking a long time.
Yes, well, it is rather limited. As you say, we know that more British nationals have made it through today, on top of 2 aid workers, we were told, came out yesterday. But they won't tell us exactly how many. They say they're not going to provide a running commentary on what's happening because of the situation changing so rapidly. But clearly, there was already a huge diplomatic effort going on behind the scenes to get the crossing opened at all in the first place. Now the Foreign Office say they're continuing to work very closely with the Israeli and Egyptian authorities to support British nationals trapped in Gaza to try and make sure that they can get them all out. Now, in terms of the numbers, we understand there are around 200 British nationals, but also their dependents as well, although the overall total is still thought to be in the low hundreds. And we're told by the Foreign Office that they've passed a list of all those names to the Egyptian and Israeli authorities, and that they are being prioritised by medical vulnerability. The government has, as that doctor there alluded to, sent out teams of people from the Foreign Office to support people when they make it through the crossing, both at Rafah itself, and then there's a Border Force team in Cairo, and also a team from the Red Cross is out there to help people with the psychological impacts of the trauma that they have suffered. But clearly the government's under a lot of pressure to do more. Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, was speaking about this earlier. She said, well, they are working with the authorities to get people out. That was quite diplomatic. But her front bench colleague, Jess Phillips, much more critical. She said, we're not getting Brits out quickly enough, and that the government's diplomatic efforts just don't seem to have enough sway. She's been talking about a constituent of hers who's desperately waiting for news, who has 16 relatives stuck in Gaza, and many others, of course, in that position, calling on their MPs for answers. Of course, the First Minister of Scotland, Humza Yousaf, no news yet on his family members either. And really, that's kind of the uncomfortable truth of all of this. There's been a lot of frantic diplomatic efforts. We've seen the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary travelling around the Middle East, holding many phone calls, but actually, in terms of what power they have to get British people out of Gaza, that it's really out of their control.
Amanda, thank you. Amanda Acas there with the latest on the Foreign Office and their efforts to get British nationals out of Gaza, more hopefully leaving tomorrow. Let's return to those live pictures over the skies of Gaza. This is on the Israel border with Gaza. Illumination flares are being sent up into the sky. You can see a series of flares here. These are live pictures. You can hear the sounds of explosions in the background. Of course, lights out across Gaza with that power outage. Gaza in darkness once again. These illuminating flares. A source of light in the sky to see the ground below. You can see the flashes there, but this is the scene above the skies of the Israel-Gaza border tonight. Separately to what's going on here, we've heard from the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, this evening, saying that they have completely encircled Gaza City. This is as part of their ground offensive. They have completely encircled Gaza City, according to IDF sources this evening. Still to come on the UK tonight, the Bank of England warns the economy will flatline until early 2025. But what does all of that mean for your finances? Also ahead, we'll have the latest as the COVID inquiry hears that the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, wanted to decide who should live and who should die if hospitals became overwhelmed. And the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, says he is hopeful his AI summit has tipped the balance in favour of humanity. We'll have the latest as he holds talks with Elon Musk.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. Alex Crawford joining us now from Ukraine.
Their personal possessions are all scattered around the place.
Our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, try and make sense of the big numbers for us.
Things can change incredibly quickly, and that's what they have done.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky News' West of England correspondent.
Welcome back. You're watching the UK Tonight. Here's what's coming up. We'll have the latest from across the UK as Storm Ciaran continues to pummel the country. And why Glasgow fans hoping to buy tickets today have been left a little disappointed. But first, the Bank of England has warned that the UK economy is going to flatline for the foreseeable future, with almost no economic growth forecast until 2025. It comes after the bank decided to hold interest rates at 5.25% for a second consecutive time. But what does that actually mean for families' finances across the country? Our economics editor, Ed Conway, has this report.
A little piece of Britain's economic story has just come to an end. Natalie Parks' great-grandfather, Edgar, set up this shop a century ago, selling and repairing shoes. But now it's the latest victim of the cost of living crisis.
It's been really, really hard. People's spending habits have changed drastically. The repair side of the business was busy. We were really busy, but it wasn't enough to keep us open, unfortunately. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, and I promised my dad I'd look after my family when he died, and I just feel like I've let them down.
Imagine thousands of stories like this across the country and you begin to get a sense of how the economy is doing. soggy, to judge from what the Bank of England is saying, flatlining. But the governor says interest rates are staying where they are.
Policy is restrictive, to use the phrase that we're all using in various ways.
Restrictive meaning it's kind of like...
It's having an effect. It's biting, if you like, in that sense. That's what we need. And it's too soon to start talking about, when we move away from that. I think we're all saying that in various ways.
It's too soon. When is it time?
Well, our job is to get inflation down to 2%. So I think we've got to be much more confident that we're headed there than any of us, I think, are currently.
And you're not confident at the moment?
Well, there are risks. There are a lot of risks out there, and we've got to see a lot more progress because, let's face it, inflation is still at 6.7%.
But the bank knows that firm stance is going to make it even more unpopular.
Talk to people here, and they tell you the hard bit wasn't raising interest rates faster than ever before, up to really high levels. The hard bit is keeping them high, higher than anyone really expected, for longer than they expect, even as households and businesses around the country are suffering.
For Natalie, the final straw came when her husband lost his job of 22 years after window and door firm SafeStyle went into administration.
He was just distraught. He'd received a text message from SafeStyle to tell him that they were to down tools and they no longer needed him. They were being made redundant, so, yeah.
So it goes in today's economy. Individual tales of financial pain adding up to a bigger story. We're all hoping for a happy ending, but, says the bank, it might not come for quite a while. Ed Conway, Sky News.
Right, let's take a look at some of the other stories making news in the UK tonight. The COVID inquiry has been hearing that the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, wanted to decide who should live and who should die if the NHS became overwhelmed during the COVID pandemic. The former Chief Executive of the NHS, Simon Stevens, presented evidence today that said Mr Hancock thought he, rather than doctors or the public, should decide who to prioritise if hospitals became overrun. Lord Stevens went on to add that, fortunately, this horrible dilemma never crystallised.
I certainly wanted to discourage the idea that an individual Secretary of State, other than in the most exceptional circumstances, should be deciding how care would be provided. I felt that we are well served by the medical profession in consultation with patients to the greatest extent possible making those kinds of decisions.
The parents of a critically ill baby say they will appeal after losing a legal bid to move their child to Italy for life support treatment. A High Court judge refused to allow Indy Gregory's parents to transfer the 8-month-old to a hospital in Rome for specialist treatment for mitochondrial disease, saying that it would not be in her best interests. Speaking to Sky News, Indy's parents said they were heartbroken and shocked at the decision. Rishi Sunak says he is hopeful his artificial intelligence summit has tipped the balance in favour of humanity. It comes as he holds talks with the owner of X and Tesla, Elon Musk, tonight. Earlier, governments had reached an agreement with tech companies to test new AI models before they're released. Glastonbury Festival ticket sales have been delayed by 2 weeks after some fans reported issues with their registration. The official announcement came just hours before the first batch of tickets for the 2024 festival were due to go on sale this evening. Organisers said the postponement was to ensure everyone who would like to buy a ticket is able to register and therefore be eligible to purchase one. Still to come on the UK tonight. The long and winding road comes to an end as the Beatles release their final song featuring the Fab Four. Hello, welcome back to the UK Tonight. Let's return to our top story, Storm Ciaran, which has battered the UK and the Channel Islands. Hundreds of schools closing, thousands of homes without power. Well, I'm joined now by some of those affected. Paul Silcock, Vice President of Jersey Table Tennis. Colin McGrath is an SDLP MLA and joins us from Downpatrick. And Mary Donough is a flood resilience campaigner and she joins us from Ledbury in Herefordshire. Thank you all for joining us on the UK Tonight this evening. Just want to talk about what you've been experiencing in your part of the world, really. Paul, if I'll come to you, we've been talking throughout the day here on Sky News. Jersey really did bear the brunt of Storm Ciaran last night.
Yeah, good evening, Sarah-Jane. Yeah, the island's been devastated with the water damage and as well as the winds that impacted Jersey yesterday evening and this morning.
Can you tell us what happened to your table tennis club? Because I understand, you know, it was directly impacted and pretty much is going to be unusable for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, the centre was based in a village called St Clements in the centre of Jersey, and that took the brunt of the storm last night. The centre itself is in quite an exposed area, and unfortunately, being a wooden frame meant that the wind destroyed the roof and obviously the canteen area of the table tennis centre. So you're right, at the moment we're working towards getting the facility safe, secure, and then now look to see what's going to be done to try and repair the damage.
Yeah, Paul, we're just looking at the pictures now of what's left, you know, what you discovered in the cold light of day this morning. Elsewhere on the island, how have you personally been affected, family and friends? Because, you know, no part of that island was untouched by what went on. Winds of up to 100 miles per hour are recorded in some areas.
Yeah, no, from an island perspective, there's lots of businesses, lots of other sports facilities that are impacted, and we are really, our thoughts go out to everyone that's been impacted. I mean, you know, we will rebuild, we can get everything sorted, but there's a lot of islanders that are impacted by the storms from last night and this morning.
Well, Paul, you know, we hope that you're all safe and well. You're not out of the woods yet. You've got more bad weather coming your way. We know that much. Let's go to Colin in Downpatrick. Colin, give me a picture of what you've been through over the past 24 hours.
Yeah, good evening. It's been a very difficult time here in Downpatrick in County Down. Over the last number of weeks, we've had a considerable amount of rainfall, but in the last couple of days, an exceptional amount of rainfall, which resulted in severe flooding in the main streets of Downpatrick. We had upwards of 30 businesses under about 4 to 5 foot of water. We had our shopping centres cut off, bus services cancelled, and just really there's going to be an absolutely massive amount of work that's going to have to be done to get the town back in ship shape again. This fell very quickly, just overnight. This water creeped up the main street of the town. Businesses were helpless to just stand back and watch what was happening. And we will have to ensure now that we have some sort of economic response to help those businesses, especially as we're only a number of weeks away from Christmas.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it, Colin? We're just looking at the jaw-dropping images of your main street there. I mean, the only way you could get down that is by kayak or boat. I mean, how big an operation is this going to be to get back on your feet? Like you said, Christmas is coming.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take, I would say, the best part of the next week just for the water to subside and then for businesses to be able to get access to see what damage is done. But of course, it'll take many other weeks for them to get their shops dried out, to get their merchandise back in again. And as I say, that will probably mean that they will miss Christmas, which is the sort of time of year when they make the money that sees them through for the early part of the next year. So this is a very traumatic time for them, and it is a time that we need to see government standing up. But of course, here in Northern Ireland, we don't have government because of the collapse of the Assembly, which has made things even more difficult. So we're appealing to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, for the Northern Ireland office to intervene and help businesses.
Well, Colin, your appeal is being heard loud and clear on the UK Tonight here on Sky News. Don't you worry about that. Let's go to Mary Donough, a flood resilience campaigner. She's in Ledbury in Herefordshire. Now, Mary, you're used to flooding. You've been there, seen there, done it before. What have you made of events where you were over the last 24 hours?
Well, it's unbelievable, really, and my heart goes out to everybody that's been impacted, both in Jersey and right across vast swathes of this country. And we've got to remember as well that this is right on the top of Storm Babette, when many properties were flooded. The ground is absolutely saturated. And I've spent my entire day in front of a camera trying to give people advice on how to prepare for a flood and indeed how to recover from a flood, because the average person is out of their home for 9 months. And that's going to impact Christmas. Loads of people are going to have to find alternative accommodation. We've lost roads, we've lost railways that have been, railway tracks that have been flooded. We can see now all the storms right across the south coast and Cornwall, absolutely buffeted by terrible storms that are coming all over the place. So it's going to be a very, very difficult time for those impacted, and it's going to be no quick fix.
Yeah, really difficult, no quick fix. Give us the benefit of your wisdom, Mary, because from people I've been speaking to today, I was down in Hastings earlier on today talking to, people in businesses there, and they were saying it's the lack of urgency from local authorities or councils or whatever in helping them get back up on their feet, because as you said, people can be out of their home for 9 months. Businesses can literally go under if they have this level of flooding, not once, but twice within the space of a couple of weeks. What advice would you give to people who feel that they're on the edge and not getting the help they need?
Well, first of all, we've got to remember that local authorities are pared down to the absolute minimum, and they are doing their very best. Sometimes local authorities have just 1 or 2 members of staff for their county council dealing with it. So they're sorely stretched. So, we've got to remember how hard they're working. But look, I have written a flood recovery guide. It's on my website, which is floodmary.com, and it's full of advice on how to deal with the immediate impacts of floods. And that's both if you've got an insurance and if you haven't got insurance. And it literally walks people what to do with both scenarios. And also, I've written a book called Property Flood Resilience, lots of real-life case studies, including many businesses. If we remember Hebden Bridge, that was regularly flooded, the businesses there have built back better to enable them to recover from a flood. Give you an example, there was a large jewellery shop in Hebden Bridge that was flooded to 5 foot, and it was shut for 111 days when it had flooded. But after building back better and putting in flood resilience and pumps and flood doors, washable plaster, and planning how they would deal with the next flood, when they were flooded again, they were open again 3 days later.
Yeah, Mary, it's about learning the lessons, isn't it? And it can feel hopeless for so many people caught up in this situation right now. But that's a really good note to end on. You've given some useful advice there and some takeaways as well in terms of your website. Mary, thank you so much. That's Mary Dono in Herefordshire, Colin McGrath in Downpatrick, and Paul Silcock in Jersey. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you. Now, a moment that music fans have been waiting for. Last week on the show, we teased you and told you the Beatles were releasing a new tune. Well, this afternoon, we heard it for the first time. Their new single, Now and Then, is being billed as the final song to feature all of the Fab Four. It was originally written and recorded by John Lennon in the late 70s. After his death, the other 3 Beatles worked on it, but the project was abandoned. That is, until now. Our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer, has more. Well, it's quite a moment in music history, and I'm joined now to talk about it by the Beatles biographer, Philip Norman, who's also just written a new book about George Harrison. Philip, thank you for coming in. First of all, what do you think about the final song?
I think it's absolutely terrible. It sounds like the Electric Light Orchestra, an outtake by the Electric Light Orchestra in the 70s. You don't know it's the Beatles, really. It's such a mess. George, who could be very sort of ill-tempered, as I know, because I've just written a book about him, didn't want this to go out. It's been around since the 90s.
Is that because he didn't like it or because it was quite difficult? Because it was a difficult process. The original demo was recorded by John Lennon in 1978 on cassette. So you can imagine trying to bring that up to modern day music standards was difficult. Was it because of the process or because he didn't like the tune like you?
Well, no, it's not that I don't think there is a tune, quite honestly. And,
I'm loving your honesty.
John was doing a lot of doodling. He was supposed to have retired, but he hadn't really retired. He was still competing with Paul privately in the Dakota building. And there were actually 4 on a cassette tape. One that came out was Free as a Bird, which was very, very sweet and fragile, not very like John as we remember him. But George, in the end, he didn't think they'd got it back to the sort of standard to release, and he was right, and I rather respect George even more for that.
OK, so my first question was, do you like it? We know the answer to that. My second question is, does it matter? It's the Beatles.
It does matter because this has been surrounded by hype, really old-fashioned, grotesque hype around this little fragile non-event. And the Beatles were never about hype. When the Beatles were around, they just issued one amazing song after another. They didn't have to hype it. Now this has sort of all been hyped up. Peter Jackson, who produced what is called the Mammoth documentary about the Get Back album session. I would say elephantine, perhaps more than mammoth.
Well, he's now done this 15-minute documentary to accompany this song, right?
So how many more times we've got to hear Peter Jackson say, I'm a Beatles fan? You don't give this sort of thing to a Beatles fan because a Beatles fan doesn't know what to leave out.
Okay.
So you always he should really stick to Hobbits and the First World War.
Oh, well, not everybody agrees with you. You know, I've seen reaction on social media. It's moved some Beatles fans to tears. Liam Gallagher, there's a thing or two about music. You know, people say the Gallagher brothers heavily influenced by the Beatles.
Well, they were a tribute band, the Beatles tribute band.
It's absolutely incredible, biblical, celestial, heartbreaking and heartwarming. That's the view of Liam Gallagher. Do you think people are seeing this through rose-tinted glasses in terms of, you know, there's such overwhelming good feeling for the Beatles because not all of their songs were great. We can all name a Beatles song that we're probably all a bit like, well, I'm not too keen on that one.
Some of them by George, actually. Yeah, some of them by... yeah. But in general, I mean, they produced an amazing body of work in a very, very short time.
Why have they done this, then?
Well, it's the Apple company and it's monetising the Beatles. There's a lot of talk about the Beatles' legacy, but their legacy is absolutely secure. Yeah. They're not like a pop band anymore. They're more like a sort of kind of worldwide religion. Wherever you go in the world, whatever age, whatever culture you talk to, know about the Beatles.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say it's about their legacy. And John's legacy, the most insecure person in the world that he was, his legacy is absolutely secure.
Philip Norman, it's been so interesting to talk to you. Thank you for coming in and giving some insight and some incredible honesty as well, because there is a lot of emotion tied up in what's happened today for Beatles fans, but a healthy dose of realism there. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Coming up on the UK tonight, going for a royal ride, the Prince and Princess of Wales show off their mountain biking skills during a visit to northern Scotland. And who is to blame for Manchester United's worst start at Old Trafford in nearly 100 years? One club legend makes a case for backing under pressure Erik ten Hag.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over. Christchurch has been changed forever by what happened here.
There was a river of blood coming out of the mosque. That's a scene that you don't forget.
Ida has certainly left its mark on New Orleans.
It just feels heartbreaking.
We help you understand the world with us. We are standing on the supply line right into the heart of America's opioid crisis. I've reported from around the world and around the UK. Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who've made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Joe Biden knows the celebrations are over, and this is a country in crisis.
You don't want to be remembered this way. You always want to be remembered as something positive.
It is almost impossible to predict where these fires will go next. This gives you an idea of the strength of those winds, strong enough to bend and twist metal.
Do you regret the tweet, Gary?
There's no sign, publicly at least, of either side being willing to give ground. How do you reassure the public that all of these mistakes wouldn't be made again? I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Welcome back to the UK Tonight. David is here with a look at the sport, and we're going to talk about Manchester United. Nice, easy questions to start with. Why are Manchester United so bad at the moment?
Well, again, this is one of these. We haven't got that long, Sarah-Jane, to discuss this. It always intrigues me how much does a manager get blamed, or how much is he to blame, or how much credit should he or she take when a team plays badly? Because they don't kick the balls, they don't score the goals, or let the goals in. He's been beset by injuries with his back four. Marcus Rashford was banging the goals in last year, hasn't happened for him this year. But, look, they've had a poor start to the season. They won the Carabao Cup last year. They were third in the Premier League. They've had 8 defeats in 15 games. It's the first time they've lost successive games 3-0 at home since the 1960s, and the first time they've lost 5 of their first 10 home league games in about 90 years. So it hasn't been pretty.
And Erik ten Hag, the manager, coming under a little bit of pressure, and there's talk about his man management style, perhaps, being one of the factors as well.
Yeah, well, the Times are saying he's on thin ice. The Telegraph are saying some players are privately turning against him. They're not happy with how he's treated some players. Now, you remember, he's got his reputation as being a bit of a disciplinarian. It kind of worked with Cristiano Ronaldo when he was a bit too kind of big for his boots and left before games had finished. So he put him out to pasture, and that was kind of seen as a positive move. But he's done the same with Jadon Sancho. He stripped Harry Maguire of the captaincy. So, yeah, questions Erik ten Hag under a lot of pressure. So we watch this space. Erik ten Hag struggling perhaps at Manchester United under pressure, but one of his former players is backing him.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
I was born and raised here, so you just naturally, obviously, you enter the competitions here, and that's just how it works. So I never really thought about the possibility of representing Poland or Jamaica, even though that's where my blood's from. So that was just natural, and the Olympics was the dream. And obviously I would have been so proud to have represented Great Britain, and I was in the other competitions that I got to do it in, but it was the Olympics as the dream.
So talk me through, when you went and told the Jamaican side of your family that you would go in to compete for Jamaica at the Olympics, what happened? How excited were they?
So I was in LA at the time, and my mum and my brother were helping to talk to my Jamaican side of my family to sort the documents, and it was really great because we got to get in touch with a lot more of the family members that we didn't know, because my parents are split up, so we didn't really have a strong relationship with my dad, who is the Jamaican side. So we got to know my great uncle and all of his children, and now we have a good relationship with them. So that's been one incredible thing that's come out of everything.
What else was it that really made you gravitate towards there and not Poland?
I felt like I would just fit in more. I think the spirit that you see the Jamaican athletes with their personality and their charisma, I felt like I would fit that mould. My Polish isn't great, so I thought, yeah, I would definitely fit into that team and I'd have a good time. And also, I did realise that the programme was at the very beginning, so I realised that would come with some struggles, whereas Poland's actually got a bit of a developed gymnastics programme, so I knew there'd be some struggles both ways, kind of either breaking into an established programme or trying to help start or be near the beginning of a brand new gymnastics programme. Just being there and being around it and the energy, and also seeing how seriously they're taking it is amazing, and thinking in the future, if we can continue sort of the momentum that we've already got behind it, that there could be a Jamaican gymnast or a team on that podium, and knowing that I was maybe a tiny, tiny part of that is really, really exciting. Yeah, when I felt really accepted by Jamaicans, that was really special to me. In 2019, I did a competition that was a friendly
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Right, let's have a look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, it's an improving picture now that Storm Ciaran has cleared into the North Sea, but Friday will bring some blustery showers. It's still going to be a windy evening for many of us, but the strongest winds are along the Channel coast. They've now moved away. There'll be outbreaks of rain, locally heavy, but much of Ireland and Northern Ireland will be dry. That rain will slowly become confined to Scotland tonight, but showers will take over more of the west later. Storm Ciaran will sit over the North Sea, so it will remain on the windy side, especially in coastal regions. Scotland is going to be rather cloudy tomorrow morning with spells of rain, especially in the east. Elsewhere, there'll be a mix of sunny spells and blustery showers, but the south of Ireland and east of England are looking mainly dry. It is going to be rather windy as well. You can expect further showers during the afternoon, some of them heavy, but rain over Scotland will ease up and turn increasingly patchy. Saturday will bring wind and rain to southern Britain, with showers following. Elsewhere, it's going to be drier and calmer.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, we always like to leave you with something a little bit unexpected from across the UK, something weird, something wonderful. And tonight, it comes from northern Scotland. Now, this isn't something you see every day. The Prince and Princess of Wales on BMXs. They went for a royal ride today, showing off their mountain biking skills to some rather excited crowds in Moray. They completed an obstacle course. We, of course, know how competitive the royal couple are. They were visiting the town of Moray to learn more about a charity that aims to make a difference to the lives of young people through outdoor learning and activity. And neither of them fell off. They completed the obstacle course, so well done to them. That's all from the UK tonight. You can catch up on all the highlights on our webpage. You can scan the QR code on your screen and share your thoughts with us there as well. We'll see you on Monday at 8.